Not only is this characteristic of our relationship with people that we love, but it is also characteristic of the Christian life. I don't know how many of you had a dramatic conversion experience when you accepted the Lord, but most of us did. Whether it was at an altar, whether it was at a camp, whether it was in private prayer, whether it was in church, wherever it happened to have been. In that moment when you got on your face before God and you asked Him to forgive you of your sins and to make you clean again, and there was all that guilt that was lifted off of you, and that sense of cleanness and oneness with the Creator of the universe. Not everybody experiences that emotionally, but most people do. And when they do, it is one wild ride. It is perhaps the most exhilarating thing in living, to have that relationship, to have God Himself just seem to have His Spirit just descend on you. You know what I'm talking about? Have you been there? Have you experienced that kind of thing? Some of you know what I mean. What I wish every young Christian understood is that the relationship with the Lord is also an emotional relationship. And it oscillates too. Because even in a relationship with the Lord, you can't stay emotionally exhilarated. You just can't stay up there. You're going to come down. And what happens is when you get into the lower end of that cycle, the person says, yeah, I really made a fool out of myself, didn't I? I really been on a trip here. I really convinced myself of something that wasn't true. Because I don't feel it anymore. So the evidence of the relationship with the Lord is that I feel Him. Now I want to ask you a question. Does the Lord love us just as much in this end of the cycle as He does in this end of the cycle? Yeah. Is there any reason at all to feel less loved here than you were here? See, you really just need to know that the cycle is oscillating, and that's the way our emotions work, and that's the way we can expect them. Anybody want to say anything about what we've talked about so far? Yeah.
Is it mentally healthy or even possible to try and stabilize our emotions where we're not such a swing if we're one of those people that's really happy or really depressed?
What is really healthy, and is really the reason that I bring it up here, is to understand the swing and to not believe it when it comes, and to not be depressed by it when you're in the low end of that thing, and to recognize that this is a natural oscillation. And when you feel bad today, and you're kind of down, and you don't have much energy, and life doesn't look too good, remember that you won't stay down there either. And when you're exhilarated, remember to brace yourself, because you're coming down. I have said to Shirley when we've gotten back from vacations, or perhaps we've gone through a Christmas holiday and the family's been there and we've been all excited and we've gone through the Christmas experience and there's dinners and parties and all this stuff, and I've said to Shirley, you know what, we really are up a long way and we better be careful because we've got to come down. I remember when we bought our house in 1972. Boy, that was one thrilling thing. And we moved in and we had so much energy. We tore into that place and we painted the walls and we did all this stuff. And I remember saying to Shirley again, we really are a long ways up in the sky. Let's brace ourselves. And sure enough, about 3 or 4 days later, why did we move here? You know, it just, we had buyer's remorse, they call it, and we weren't sure that we'd done the right thing. If you understand it, you can deal with it. I'm not sure you can change it a whole lot. Yes?
I've heard before that a lot of times our emotions are controlled in part by chemicals inside our body, and that is stimulated a lot by exercise. I was wondering if that's...
That is a very good point, and I think you can do a lot to bring yourself out of the low end of that cycle by good nutrition and good exercise and rest. Those three things together will tend to bring you up. See, some people who really have a problem go down like that and stay down. So it's not a regular rhythm, but it is a prolonged depression. For those people, getting into a vigorous, medically supervised exercise program is a very important step. Yes?
Do you think the Lord ever uses our emotions to help us make decisions?
There is no doubt in my mind but what God uses the entire individual. He didn't expect you to set your emotions aside. He made us emotional creatures. But I tell you this much, if you make your decisions strictly on the basis of this fluctuation, you're in a whole lot of trouble. And you know that that is the primary way people determine God's will? What do they say when they make a big decision? I just felt like it's what God wanted me to do. I just felt that that's what He was saying to me. Well, what you feel is probably influenced by what you want. It's probably influenced by the advantages there are in doing one thing versus another. It's influenced by how much sleep you had last night, what time of the month it is. It's influenced by who loves you and who cares and what's going on in your life. What you feel is not very reliable. I think it's much more important to determine God's will on the basis of providential circumstances, doors that open and close. God seems to be speaking through this, through what trusted advisors who have a strong Christian faith feel and think, through what the Word says, what the Scriptures tell you, and through your knowledge of what is right. You know what's right, basically. We've got that written on our hearts. I dealt with one family that had a little girl. She was about 8 or 9 years of age, and the mother decided God was calling her to become a minister. And she abandoned the family and took off and left this entire family, including this little girl, who became the mother of the family. And the father wasn't able to take care of the family. He's working 12 hours a day, and this little girl had to cook and clean, and she really kind of became the mother of the family. I don't believe God was leading that mother to do that. I think she found a convenient excuse to get away from the responsibilities of a big family. God just doesn't do that. And what is right will probably be figured into the mix.
Do you think that some of this, people who are kind of up, down, do you think it kind of levels out the older they get? Because, people say, well, they've changed a lot. They're a lot more easygoing and stuff like that.
It does tend to level out for most people. The teen years, usually you experience a greater fluctuation than you will even in the 20s. So there are these strong feelings because there's a hormonal adjustment that's being made that has the whole system torn up. But then in menopause for women, anywhere from 40 to 52, 53 years of age, the emotions go crazy again. And for the same reason, because the hormones are changing. Yes?
Do you think it has anything to do with the personalities? And you were saying that some people are really steady, and that's kind of sounded like a phlegmatic where they just really don't. They just kind of go with the flow.
Temperaments vary tremendously, and I'm convinced that a good part of that is genetic. Now, there's a lot that you learn and a lot of influences that come in when you're 1 year and 2 years and 3 years of age that puts a stamp on you. But a whole lot of what you are is what you're born with. I mean, every mother who has 3 or 4 children will tell you, every one of them will tell you, that every child they had a different feel, a different response, a different temperament, a different personality the first time they put that baby in her arms. They didn't just become different later. They were different at birth. And you know what? In graduate school, I was not taught that. I was taught that we're kind of born as blank slates, and, there's this blank the child that comes into the world, and then everything he is a result of experience. And I now know that that's nonsense. And why wouldn't it be? If God can make every snowflake unique and different, if He can make every grain of sand different, billions of grains of sand at every beach, you examine them under a microscope, every one of them is unique and different. How stupid to think that He rubber stamps human beings and we come into this world all the same, and then experience only makes the difference. I don't believe it. God makes us radically different people. That's why He spoke of Jacob and Esau, the twins, before they were born and described how different they were. You remember in that story? And He said one is going to be a soft individual and the other one was going to be a wild horse of a man. He was going to be hated by men. And ultimately it said he was hated by God. That was Esau. They're very different temperaments. They were born that way. But they're still accountable for their own behavior.